Hey everybody, I'm Flake and I want you to play Magic, and this is where we're at right now. We already learned about lands and it's now time to learn about another very important card type that is essentially the engine or the driving force of the majority of decks that you're going to be playing. I'm talking, of course, about creatures. So why don't we learn all about creatures, the types, how to play them, and what they do. So we've got lands down, and now we're going to go to how to spend that mana that those lands are generating for you. And the backbone of your deck, for the most part, for most decks, is creatures. Creatures are what deal damage and receive damage, trade, and battle other creatures that your opponent might summon. So the one more important thing that we need to talk about is most cards, other than lands, are considered spells. They are summoned to the battlefield. Creatures fall under that category of spells. Creatures come in different colors. They can be dual colored, but for the most part, they're monocolored. One of the many colors that they're out there. Green, black, red, blue, white. They are there to are used to spend with the mana pool that you have generated from your lands. Now, the important thing to know about creatures is that they have various numbers and stat lines on them. So at the bottom right corner of the card is a stat line. It's typically two numbers that are there, 1/another number over there. That represents the attack rating and the strength or toughness, or rather the toughness of your creature. One is the damage that that creature does, be it to whatever target that is blocking it or that it's dealing damage to. And the other is the toughness of the creature, which is the amount of damage that it can sustain before it goes down to 0 and it dies, or is destroyed or goes to the graveyard, depending on what it is. There's certain cards that have various card text that'll have a particular game function occur when that creature's toughness is dealt 0. But basically, if the creature's toughness reaches 0, it is destroyed, it is lost. So that is the two important stat lines. And the other stat line, the other numbers you need to pay attention to is the cost. At the top corner of the card is the cost of casting that creature, the creature, of course, being a spell. The cost is typically represented by a colored mana or two colored mana or a mixture of colored mana, and then a generic grayish circle and a number within it. Now that is the converted mana cost, which is the number of colored circles plus the amount within the gray generic or colorless mana pool. That is the converted mana cost of that creature. That is the amount of mana needed to be spent in order to cast that creature from your hand. Perfect, no problem. So we've got the attack, we've got the toughness, and the cost of the creature. But how about its type? What kind of creature is it? And that you'll find right below the picture and above the game text. You'll find the type of creature, whether it's just a generic creature or a legendary creature. Legendary creatures can only exist one at a time on the battlefield. Now you could put 4 of them in your deck, no problem there. But a legendary creature is one on the battlefield at any given moment. Beyond that, there are other types like zombie or dinosaur or vampire or cat or soldier. There's so many different archetypes that exist in that part that you can build decks around them and often factor into various gameplay strategies, etc. But that is just an extra flavor for the creature card that you're playing. Now, what about below that, in the game text box? That is where all the creatures get a lot of their spice, a lot of their extra abilities. So you're not just paying for stat lines, oftentimes you're paying for magic abilities of those creatures themselves. Vanilla creatures is kind of like the slang term for a creature that is just a bunch of stats and no game text. But there are a lot of creatures that have interesting abilities. For instance, over here, we see the Ripjaw Raptor. The Ripjaw Raptor has a game text that has the Enrage effect that has a trigger that occurs when it takes damage. Now, these types of keywords and such, we can get into those in another video, but I just want to let you know that that game text box is where all the special flavors come when you're talking about creatures. Now, beyond that, lands you can deploy one at a time, or one per turn, but for creatures, as long as you have the mana to pay for it, you can cast as many as you want. You can withhold them, you can dump them all at a time, but you can cast as many creatures as your mana would permit. And how about deck building? Well, same as any other thing that isn't a basic land, the limit is 4 per deck. So if you like a particular creature or it synergizes well with your strategy, load it up and go nuts. So now that we have the basics of creatures, hopefully we can move on to the next step.